decided to get out of a building when it lost power, even if it was intermittent. You can see a lot of folks on their cell phones down there. A lot of people waiting there. That is a bus. We're not going to read too much into that, but there are a lot of people. There's a man with a bullhorn in the center of the crowd there, so maybe this is in some way related to this what was a very brief loss of power, and now we're finding out that there are areas that are affected, whether or not it's a matter of systems being reset and recycled and set to the default mode so that they can power back up. You know, everything today runs on a computer. When you take a power hit, it takes a while to bring everything else back up to speed. So that may be what we're seeing here.
Well, you mentioned earlier, Ralph, that they do have to reset the lights when it comes to the computers. Do you know if any of those traffic lights are on backup generators, or is that not possible at all?
My understanding is that that's not the case. There may be several of the most problematic and difficult, troublesome intersections that may have a secondary power source, but in most cases, if the power goes out, you pretty much lost the service of that light. Okay,
for those of us just joining us, Ralph, can you tell me exactly again the intersection we're looking at here?
Okay, we're now, let me see, my GPS is indicating that we're over, again, still over Flagler Street, but we're a couple of blocks east. We're only 1 block or 2 blocks off of Biscayne Boulevard there. We'll bring the camera back out and show you. We are in the downtown area. Traffic is moving. There are a number of police officers. The City of Miami Police Department is only several blocks away from this area, so they are getting some critical attention right now to help people continue to move. We are not seeing any forms of gridlock at this time, but there are starting to be some traffic slowdowns and traffic backups.
I mean, you know, considering traffic in Miami, I mean, without power right now, things are going swimmingly. Thanks to these police officers and hopefully some patience of the drivers. Want to reiterate to those of us just now joining us, FP&L is not saying or does not know what the problem was or is. Widespread power outage in the state of Florida. A lot of people in South Florida without power. But there is good news. The Keys power, the Florida Keys power apparently has been restored. So perhaps that's hope for everybody else who doesn't have power right now. Coral Gables, Doral, Pinecrest, North Bay Village, Aventura, Davie, and Orlando, Sarasota, Tampa area as well. Let's go to Lieutenant Iggy Carroll. You're with Miami Fire Rescue. Lieutenant Carroll, thank you so much for joining us. What can you tell us at this point?
Right now, just as you were talking earlier, we're trying to figure out, what's actually happening. I know FPNL is working diligently trying to restore the power back up. But I think the one thing that we would like to stress to everybody is that if you are stuck in elevators or you need to take an elevator, of course, take the stairs, but be very patient with us until we respond there. If you are indeed stuck in an elevator or you know somebody that is, we're responding as quickly as we can, but as safely as possible because of this power outage.
And what's the best advice you can give people on the road?
Probably as Lieutenant Santangelo said, to really take it slow, come into the intersections. Remember, all the intersections should be treated as a four-way stop. And also some areas are somewhat wet conditions, so take it very slow so that you can arrive safely.
Lieutenant Carroll, I know this is an FPNL problem, and we have reiterated that, but what have you heard so far as to what the problem is? It's such a large power outage. It seems very odd to a lot of people.
Yeah, it is, and we're somewhat baffled, but they haven't been able to tell us too much either because I know they're trying
Florida, but in the country. So I have not confirmed that Pines and Flamingo has been affected. However, several lights along Pines and along Sheridan near I-75 has been affected. Again, if you come to that situation and you find yourself at an intersection where the lights are not working, the rule here is to come to a complete stop, and if somebody else doesn't, then let them go by. But definitely, like you said, Joel, we still haven't gotten any reports. Hopefully it stays that way if anybody injured, but the way to treat this is come to a four-way stop if officials are not on scene, again, detouring traffic around the area. So I'll continue to work with my contacts over at Metro Traffic and at Florida Highway Patrol, and I'll continue to gather any more confirmed incidents where traffic has come to a standstill because of the outages here. And we're looking at pictures here on your right, those two vehicles there, again, jumping in front of others. The rule here is, Joel, I can't emphasize it enough, you got to come to a complete stop and treat this as a four-way stop situation.
All right, Roxanne, thank you very much. You all know Roxanne's voice, and you probably see her in our morning show here on NBC6. She handles all the traffic information that we talk about every day, and she's hearing all sorts of things, as she said. Traffic lights are out, spotty power outages. On the right side of your screen there, you're seeing what Roxanne was talking about. Here's an intersection. I think this is US 1 down kind of just south of downtown Miami, where lights are obviously out and the cars are all trying to negotiate and get through. But treat that as a four-way stop, and everyone will be safe. Julio Robina, who's a Florida State representative, he's on the phone with us right now. So, Mr. Robina, you just got off the phone with Florida Power and Light, correct?
That's correct. We're being told that there is a major problem with the transmission line. It's down, and it's affecting power from Miramar all the way to Homestead. So that's going to be, right now, the Florida Power and Light crews are trying to pinpoint which transmission line is actually out.
And where are you right now?
We're in South Miami, and it's affecting all my districts. So that would be everything from Miami through Coral Gables, South Miami, Pinecrest. That whole area is out of service.
Okay, so when this happened for you, what did you experience? Did you have a surge like we did, where the lights went out for a second, or did they completely go out for you?
Correct. No, they went completely out. It's almost like.
In some schools, school is out, or 10 minutes till 2. School is out in 10 minutes. Other schools, especially in Miami-Dade County, they're out in an hour and 10 minutes. So parents, don't pick up your kids. You might want to call the school, find out what's going on. All of this is because of this widespread power outage in the state of Florida.
Downtown Miami, Biscayne Boulevard, down by the Hotel Intercontinental, Flagler, and let's see what the situation is downtown, because of course there are roughly 250,000 people who work in that area every day, and if they are without power, then we may have some potentially dangerous situations there in downtown Miami. Danny is now going over the Performing Arts Center, the Arts Center, and I'm trying to look and see what you're showing us, Danny, to see if traffic lights are on. This is Biscayne Boulevard down by Bicentennial Park, as far as I can tell. What do you see, Danny? I'm having, yeah, it looks to me like the traffic, well, it's a blinking yellow.
Yeah, they're flashing there.
Yeah, chances are they probably just came back on, and that's until they reset, they're going to blink yellow.
Well, that is certainly better news. So let's check in now with Local 10's Lori Jennings in Coconut Grove for us to tell us what you're seeing there. Lori, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Calvin. And I can tell you, I am in the Coconut Grove, Coral Gables area where everything is out. And I have heard from friends right there where Michael was speaking about along Brickell Avenue. And they are as well without power. I haven't heard of any office buildings, but I have heard of condo buildings that are completely without power right there along Brickell. And down here in Coconut Grove, I'm lucky my generator is on, so I have power now. But the sun is out, but the skies are really, really gray. And I just keep getting calls from friends hoping I know some information, telling me that they're seeing outages as far south as Homestead and all the way out into Doral and by the airport. And the traffic is just a nightmare with all the traffic lights out, so many of them. So everyone's calling for information.
And Lori, for us too, it hit right around 1:15 or so. We were sitting in our newsroom, and all of a sudden we thought it was a power surge, and our energy our electricity just went out. And what about you? What time did it hit it in your home, or around the time it hit in your area?
Yeah, I'd say it was about a little before that, maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes after 1. And I get a lot of outages in the Coconut Grove, Coral Gables area because of all the foliage we have, and we just seem to get a lot of outages. So I honestly didn't think anything about it. And then 10 minutes later, my phone started ringing from so many friends wondering if I had any information. And so suddenly I'm able to piece together all these different outages, really extending all the way down toward Homestead. Again, heard from Doral area, a business there that's out right by the airport, and a condominium building on Brickell, and then definitely here in this neighborhood, right around the heart of South Miami, Coconut Grove, and Coral Gables.
All right.
So it seems very extensive.
Yeah, Lori, thank you so much, and certainly stick around with us and let us know what's happening in your part of town once again. And right now we want to check in with Lieutenant Pat Santangelo to give us more information about what we're seeing and how you all are dealing with this, Lieutenant.
Hi, good afternoon. Well, right now we have our backup generators operating, so we have power. We also have normal phone communications, and also our police radios are working normally. So we're pretty much operating the way we usually do. Having said that, we have also decided not to release our day shift. We have a shift that ends at 2 p.m. and the next shift comes on 2 to 10. So the day shift will be staying on the road. So we'll have, in about 10 minutes, we'll have double the normal amount of troopers that we ordinarily would have working, in a typical afternoon like today. I'm at the Traffic Management Center right now in Doral, which we share with Department of Transportation, and all the cameras that monitor the highways are all working right now. So we're doing the best we can to try to monitor the roadways. As you know, when the power's out and the traffic signals are out, we have to go back to what we learned during the hurricanes of the past few years, and that is, as you approach an intersection that does not have a working traffic signals, we treat it as a four-way stop sign. Now, that's a big deal, because what happens is although we're sort of operating normal right now, we're trying to minimize the amount of emergency calls that we have. Right now, it's at a minimum, and we're able to handle everything normally right now, but we don't want people who don't have to be on the road to be on the road. And I think people realize at this point that a lot of the businesses that they normally would be dealing with right now also don't have electricity. So maybe the place that you were going isn't operating anyway. So try to choose your trips very carefully. And after dark, it's going to become very treacherous. Hopefully this won't be lasting until then. But if it is the situation after dark, it becomes really treacherous, because right now, if you're driving down the road and you see a red light that's out at an intersection, you know what to do. You can stop to make sure nobody's coming. But at night, you become very disoriented, for those of you who remember back during the hurricane power outages.
Yeah, and Lieutenant, it's Michael Putney here. Good to hear your voice, and we appreciate your advice, and it's extremely good advice to stay in if you don't have to drive. We are looking at a live shot now, and we can see the skies are darkening. So in addition to being hot, we're also going to get some rain, which, Pat, I think you would say that's only going to compound the problem for driving.
Well, as you know, our crash rate increases dramatically as soon as it starts raining. So again, the best advice is to stay off the road. And again, Mike, just want to emphasize at night, try not to be driving should the electricity still be out at night, because you cannot even tell when you're approaching an intersection, and that's when we get some of the violent crashes.
All right, Lieutenant Pat Santangelo. Pat, thanks for your help. Always good to speak with you. We want to go now to Local 10 reporter Rob Schmidt, who is out someplace here, I believe, in Miami. Pat, Rob, where are you?
Yeah, Michael, we're at 61st, about 60th or 61st and Biscayne here, and we basically headed out trying to get an idea of where this power outage stretches to. And what we found is if you go about 50 feet behind us, down to about 59th, if you're looking at our picture here, you'll find that the lights are on, the power's on, everything's fine. You can't really tell because it's daytime now, but the light at 58th or 59th was on, and we got here to 60th, 61st, and it's all off. So we know that from Biscayne, ballpark around 30th, all the way up here to 60th, the power's on, not on here. The big concern, like you guys were saying, is it looks like there's a storm moving into the area, and also we're looking at rush hour going to start picking up here at some point. It's about 2 o'clock now. By about 3, we notice, the traffic gets a little heavier, and it's going to become more of a dangerous situation. You tack on rain and a lack of traffic lights, and you could really be looking at some problems here. Right now, as you see on Biscayne, the traffic fairly light. This is not too big of a problem area, but this seems to be the beginning of a quadrant of no power. Now, where this quadrant goes to is anybody's guess. You'd have to ask the FPL. We're going to try and figure that information out as quick as we can, but we know that south of here on Biscayne, you're looking good. North of here, not so good, and people are just trying to be as safe as they can. This crew right over here, we thought they might have something to do with this, but they are not working on that. They're just heading up. Looks like they're putting in a pole of some sort, but they're not working on the power. So no sign of FPL in this area. No power north of here on Biscayne. And with that information, Michael, I'll send it on back to you.
All right, Rob, thank you very much. And we would encourage you to move on to other parts of Miami-Dade County or even up into Broward and come back to us with whatever you find. I am told now that the Port of Miami does have power. Also, Miami International Airport has power, and that is good news. We are looking at a live shot now of the skies, and they are darkening, and clearly rain has moved in. If you are just joining us now, we want to sort of back up and tell you that in the vicinity of 1:15 this afternoon, power outages began cropping up all across South Florida, Broward, Miami-Dade County. The power apparently has gone off, come back on, or has never come back on in some areas, and we are trying very hard to find out from Florida Power and Light what has caused this and what they are doing to try to repair it. The one thing that we have found from Florida Power and Light is they say it is a major transmission line failure. Where that transmission line is and how it failed, we don't know, and we don't know what they're trying to do to repair it, but rest assured, I know they're trying to repair it. Now, we're looking at an intersection here, and Danny Mangano and Sky 10, whereabouts is this intersection? Because we see some people, I think that's a police officer out there trying to direct traffic.
Yeah, that's correct. Southwest 17th and US 1, there is no lights here. So we're going to continue traveling west on US 1 and see how far this problem is.
And if I can jump in here very quickly here to give our viewers who are listening and watching in East Broward County, a tornado warning is in effect right now, and you can see from those ominous clouds that are now darkening our skies over South Florida. In East Broward County, a tornado warning is now in effect to add to the already tough issues that we're dealing with in terms of not having any electricity in some parts of Miami-Dade and Broward counties. And right there, you can see this right here, how you are looking at a picture of how the green that represents the rain that's moving into the Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Miami-Dade areas, now hovering over South Florida right now, dropping rain, dropping storms, and in some areas as we see them now. Right now we have Trent Eric, who is on the phone with us, our chief meteorologist, who will fill us in a whole lot more about the forecast and about the weather.
Hey, Calvin, this is Trent here. We do have that tornado warning for eastern Broward until 2:30 this afternoon. Now, Doppler radar has indicated some rotation with this storm, but just like everyone else here in South Florida, right now I'm relying on a battery-powered weather radio. We do have power down in Cutler Bay, but at the moment, no internet access. I'm sure there's some power outages with my DSL connection, but you guys are seeing it on the radar there. This storm appears to be drifting out to sea, so the threat should be short-lived here until about 2:30.
Well, that is good news, but for those people who are getting that warning in East Broward County, what should they do, Trent?
Well, right now, bottom line, if you live there in eastern Broward County, it looks like the central sections, judging by the radar here on Local 10, go to an interior part of your home. Stay away from windows and doors. Right now, this is only Doppler radar indicated. There's no ground truth. And what that means right now is there has been no spotted tornado on the ground, just a well-defined rotation signature on the radar. So stay away from windows, interior rooms such as a hallway or a bathroom.
Trent, it's Michael Putney. Tell us a little bit about this unusual spate of hot weather that we have been experiencing. I mean, I know you have been telling us the last couple of days that these temperatures, 89 the last couple of days for a high, that is either tying or setting new records, is it not?
Yeah, today we're going to get close. The forecast high today was 88 degrees. We were talking about yesterday. And you can see right now here in South Florida, all radar temperature locations in the mid-80s. 84 Miami, 83 there in Fort Lauderdale. Miccosukee not updating at this time. They're also in the lower 80s. Now, 88 degrees, if we reach that mark today, that will tie a record going back to 1897. So it's definitely a warm spell here across South Florida. Our average high for this date should be 79 degrees, so we're going to be 10 degrees warmer than where we should be. And it's all because of this cold front coming. We've got a very warm southwest flow, and that's what's allowing for a chance of thunderstorms. And that chance is actually going to increase tonight as we head through the overnight hours and early morning hours tomorrow.
Well, this heat is obviously putting a huge demand on FP&L to provide electricity. And Trent, the way I understand it is that there is obviously a power grid all across this country. One power company is really tied into another. When there is a huge demand for power, they simply buy power from adjoining power companies. But maybe in the course of bringing in that power, we don't know what it is. All FP&L will say is that they had a major transmission line failure that has caused the power outages that we are now experiencing.
Right. You know, my experience in the past in the southeast where it gets very warm in the summer, if there's an overload on the system, most of the time the power company will come out and say there has been an overload, and they'll shut down certain grids of a city in sections. This appears to be a line failure, and right now we're getting no information to say there's a correlation with the weather. However, this is definitely not helping viewers here in South Florida because of the stagnant heat today with temperatures well into the upper 80s today.
Okay, Trent, thank you so much for that. And right now we are going to check in with Lieutenant Elkin Sierra with Miami-Dade Fire. And thank you so much for joining us. And just give us the situation and what you all are doing to deal with this blackout that we have in South Florida.
What we're stressing to the public is to use all caution they can. For example, on the roadways, treat every light as a four-way stop. Do not assume the other driver will see you. Yield and stop at every light. And also, when home, use home safety as well. Turn off all appliances that were turned on prior to the power outage. We want to avoid any house fire due to the energization or power surge on these appliances when the power returns. If you use generators, be careful with carbon monoxide. Have generators outside and away from windows as you power your home with these generators. Do not use candles. They get forgotten. Use flashlights. And, of course, use a radio at home. Stay in touch with what's going on and keep abreast of the latest updates with this power failure.
That is all good advice, Lieutenant Sierra. By the way, let me just ask you, have you and your department been in touch with FP&L? And if so, what do they tell you?
All we have from them is a major transmission line failure. We're working closely with the Department of Emergency Management on details and what's going to happen next, but that's all we have so far from FP&L.
All right, Lieutenant Elkin Sierra, Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. Lieutenant, thank you so much. Calvin, I just have received word here. Miami-Dade County Public Schools are not on lockdown. We're told the schools are being held, students, I guess, are being held until it is safe for them to be dismissed. Students will only be released from school to the care of a parent or guardian without any exceptions. There will be no transportation since transportation has been suspended due to the massive power outages. Kids are, in other words, in Miami-Dade County Public Schools are being held at the schools for the moment and will only be released to a parent or guardian. And Calvin, I think we also need to repeat the information that for East Central Broward County until 2:30, a tornado warning is in effect. And as Trent Eric said, if you live in that affected area, the thing to do is to move to the interior of your home, get away from windows and doors, and turn on a portable radio or leave Local 10 on and just listen for information.
And if I can here, Michael, I'm going to read some information cold and then go to a reporter, but this is information coming from the Miami Herald. Its website, miamiherald.com, and it says power outages are cascading through many parts of South Florida, with Florida Power and Light and others reporting blackouts in portions of Miami, Doral, Westchester, Pembroke Pines, Miramar, and Boca Raton. Many traffic lights are not working, and 9 accidents were reported in Miami-Dade County between 1:04 p.m. and 1:26 p.m. Police agencies were dispatching officers to as many intersections as possible. It talks about the hospitals and how their generators have kicked back in. And in one part of western Pembroke Pines, the outage began at about 1:15, but service was restored within about 10 minutes. So that's how we can see in some areas they have power and in some other areas they do not. Now, let's go to Local 10's Mark Joyella, who is live now for us to give us some information about where he is and what you're finding out there, Mark.
Well, Calvin, I can confirm what you just reported, which is that there are indeed many car accidents that are directly related to this power failure because people are really not following the advice to use any traffic light that is out as a four-way stop, and people are just rolling through intersections, and it's causing complete chaos on the road, which is in Southwest Dade. Driving along Flagler, just after an intersection, Southwest 92nd Street, and a pizza delivery guy had just driven into another person's car because people are not stopping, and they think that because traffic continues to move that they'll just follow it as people on the cross street are trying to get through it as well. Both as you reported, Miami-Dade police are getting out to these intersections as best they can and trying to return some degree of order, get people where they're going, but in a safe fashion. And they're doing a good job of it. But there is a lot of confusion on the street. And you can go one block and you'll find an intersection where the traffic light's functioning, get to the next intersection, and then that traffic light is out. And I guess some drivers, they just assume that because the car in front of them drives through, that they'll follow through, and that's what some of the problem is. But it is a bit of a mess on the road, Mr. Edwards. following this and you've got power, be fortunate about that. If you're waiting for somebody, give them extra time because it's not easy to get around right now.
And this is something Lieutenant Santangelo was telling us about, to treat traffic lights like a four-way stop, and police really want to minimize their emergency calls just in case this blackout lasts all the way into the evening hours. And he even talked about how after dark, treacherous driving without electricity, he says simply do not drive if you don't have to. The best advice for a lot of people who are probably listening right now.
All right, Kelvin, let's go to our Fort Lauderdale Bureau Chief Carrie Weston, who is on the phone, and she has additional information. Carrie, what can you tell us?
Well, we're finding that the power is still out in parts of Davie and Cooper City and Pembroke Pines. We're hearing school bus drivers being warned to treat all intersections without traffic lights as four-way stops. We're hearing that there are lights out all up and down University Drive through Davie, Cooper City, and Pembroke Pines.
Carrie, can I interrupt to ask you, in Miami-Dade County, according to the Miami-Dade Public Schools spokesman, they are not going to put kids on buses until the power is back and it's safer, they believe. Are the Broward County Public Schools going to put children who ride buses on the buses?
Well, at this time, you have buses on the road preparing to pick children up or take children home. There are only 6 schools without power right now in Broward County, and that's in the southwest portion of the county. Everything else is operating normally. So they're just advising bus drivers when they come to an area to treat it as a four-way stop.
All right, Carrie, let me break in to tell you some good news amidst all this bad news, and that is that the tornado warning for eastern Broward County has now been canceled. So maybe it appears, as Trent was predicting, that weather system was moving west to east and was going to move off the coast over the Atlantic, and apparently that has happened. So if you live in east central Broward County, I'm sure you can breathe a sigh of relief. The tornado warning is now gone. It has been lifted.
And Michael, if I can here, one of the websites I'm looking at to stay sort of informed in terms of them updating their website more and more, it's MiamiHerald.com, and they are talking about some of the neighborhoods that are not having electricity at this time. It's Boca Raton, Brickell, Clearwater, Doral, Homestead, Key West, Lake Worth, Little Havana, Pinecrest, Pompano Beach, Miramar, North Tampa, West Kendall, Westchester, and Weston. Quite a few people on that list. Let's go now to Local 10's Glenna Milberg, who's going to give us the situation where she is. Glenna.
Calvin, we're headed to the Miami-Dade Office of Emergency Management, sort of the hub of the emergency dispatch of the county. It has just been put on level 2. That's 2 of 3 levels of readiness. And what that means is that all the essential county agencies are being called in. Police, fire, water and sewer, transit, public works. Everyone's going to have a representative here, as well as FDNL. And what I can tell you is from the Office of Emergency Management, they're saying that people they're in touch with FDNL are still trying to identify just what went wrong, where the transmission line failure was. So it sounds like at this point they're still in the identifying mode. That said, we've gotten reports that this electricity outage is as widespread as the state of Florida. FDNL, as you may know, serves other places besides South Florida. We have reports in from Brevard County, Melbourne, Titusville, Port Charlotte over in the southwest coast. There have been intermittent outages there as well. We're driving to the headquarters here. It's in Doral, and I can tell you Doral, large parts of it were reported out, but we're seeing many streetlights functioning, working. We are seeing places where there does seem to be electricity. Of course, that can be generator power. That's but importantly, on the street, there are many traffic signals that are working just fine in Doral. So it appears that pockets are being turned on as well. Right now, again, from the Emergency Management Office here in Miami-Dade, they're still waiting to hear from FDNL what went wrong, and they are calling in the troops at level 2 activation, just the beginnings of putting the pieces of a plan in place in case they need to fan out and get things done.
All right, Glenna, thank you very much. And we want to point out that we have learned just a minute ago that Orlando is experiencing some of the same problems that we are here in Southeast Florida. Apparently, they have some power outages. We don't know how extensive it is in Orlando, but they have problems there as well. Jacksonville, on the other hand, up in the northeast corner of the state, is fine. They have no power outages. So whatever the transmission line failure was, it is apparently from Orlando south. I want to go back, Calvin, to Danny Mangano in Sky 10. Danny, where are you now? What intersection are you showing us here?
Well, previously, right before this one, we were at Bird Road in US 1, and the lights just came back on. And it looks like we're trying to see all the way down US 1 if they've, in fact, come back on. And we haven't hit another light yet, so give me 1 second, and I will find one for you. Well, it looks like the lights are back on.
All right. Well, that's excellent news. I mean, clearly this is kind of eccentric. I mean, the power is off in some quadrants and on in others, and we don't exactly know the reason why, although I seem to recall from hurricanes that there are sort of breaker systems where when power is going out, they try to limit it to a geographical area so that the power outages do not spread. And once again, Danny, tell me that location. We are looking at a lot of traffic there. Whereabouts are you again?
Right now we're on US 1 and Lejeune Road, and the traffic backups are due because all the lights were out and police were directing. So it's probably going to be some time until it's clear. But it looks like traffic is starting to flow again pretty easily. We'll continue down US 1 to see if everything is still coming back on.
Well, US 1 and Lejeune is always a busy intersection, whether there is power or not. But as we are looking here, it is busy on US 1, and it does appear, well, we don't want to guess. I'm not sure whether the lights are on or off there, but traffic does appear to be moving.
Well, Michael, if we can, it's about 1:15 right now, and if we can, let's take a moment to sort of reestablish ourselves with our viewers and tell them exactly 1 hour ago, many people began experiencing some sort of a blackout. Their electricity went out, and from hospitals to schools to some of the high rises, and we've heard from so many of our reporters and so many other people, officials that we've talked with, that the blackout began right about at maybe 1:05, maybe 1:10. But the power has been out, and we do understand from FP&L that it was a major transmission line failure that perhaps caused this major blackout. And we're seeing, Michael, in some parts of South Florida, we're seeing traffic accidents. As you can see right there, there's something going on. You can see from our Sky 10, but at least 9 accidents reported now in Miami-Dade County between 1:04 and 1:26 p.m. Police agencies really trying to dispatch as many officers as they can to try to deal with confusion on the roads. As Mark Gioiello told us, that some people really are just sort of going right through the intersections and not realizing that the traffic lights were out because of this power outage. But you can see right here, police officers really trying to deal with this situation.
And but, I believe, excuse me, Calvin, I believe that Danny was going down US 1 heading south into South Miami-Dade County, and I bet that this accident is someplace, if you hear me, Danny Mangano, whereabouts is this accident?
Stanford Drive in US 1, and this just happened probably about 2 minutes before we got here, because the police were running out just as we were pulling up on scene.
Right, and you can see that in the silver car there that the airbags deployed. So this accident, we don't know if anyone was injured, but it was probably pretty violent. We do want to tell you that the Broward County Emergency Operations Center is not being activated. They are not opening up in Broward County, but Glenna Melberg says that the Miami-Dade County EOC is opening up, and they are now at a level 2, which is not an emergency level, but it's certainly serious, and they're calling in every participating police and fire department in Miami-Dade County, and they will be sending representatives, as indeed will FP&L. And as Calvin just said, we don't know where this major transmission line failure is. We only know that FP&L has said they've got one, and that is the cause of the power outages that we are experiencing.
And if we can, Michael, we have Willie Marna on the phone right now with the Miami Police Department to just give us a rundown as to how you all are dealing with what one of our reporters called confusion on the streets. I guess we're going to try to effort that phone call again and try to reestablish it here. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, let us know. We are getting reports of 9 accidents in a matter of about 22 minutes between 104 and 126 in Miami-Dade. How are you all dealing with that?
Well, we have also a number of accidents. Apparently, these drivers need to understand when you enter an intersection that has no traffic light, that intersection needs to be treated as a 4-way stop sign, and you have to yield the right of way. At this time, we do have still numerous intersections without traffic lights, and again, we ask these drivers to use extreme caution.
You know, we heard earlier from Lieutenant Pat Santangelo of the Florida Highway Patrol, who said that the shift that normally goes off duty, FHP troopers, they go home or go off duty at 2 o'clock, are being held over, as well as the shift coming on. What about Miami-Dade?
Okay, well, the city of Miami, at this point, we have a shift that's about to come in, and at this time, our morning shift is not to leave until like approximately 4. So we're determining the extent, how fast will this be recouped, so to say, and decision has not been made to keep that first shift on.
What about in downtown Miami? Do you have any reports of some of the many high-rises there, office buildings and residential buildings, that clearly people commute by elevator and maybe on upper floors? I mean, there are stairs and people can get up and down, but it's not easy.
Absolutely. Each of these buildings is up to their management. I understand that several buildings have allowed their employees to go home. At this point, they don't know when the lights will be back. So they have allowed their employees to go home, and some of these buildings are in fact tall.
Right. All right. And do you have, I mean, I know the city of Miami always has a good contingent of officers on foot and even on horseback in the downtown area. Are you trying to get more officers out in that area to deal with, if you're going to have office buildings that are going to be sending people home, you're going to have a lot more people on the streets right now?
Absolutely. So that is one thing that we're trying to plan ahead. It's kind of, you know, we have to deal with what we have right now. And the officers that we have available are already assisting with traffic.
All right, excellent. Thank you for your help. We appreciate the information, Officer.
Thank you.
I'm also reminded, Calvin, a little bit of history of some previous major blackouts that have occurred, not thankfully in our community, but if you recall back in 2003, there was a huge blackout in August of 2003. It affected the Northeast, the Midwest, and Canada. 50 million people altogether were affected in 8 states, 9,300 square miles, and it took 2 days to get the power back on after that incident. Perhaps the most famous power blackout in this country, at least in modern times, was in July of 1977, the New York City blackout, which lasted 24 hours, and it covered the entire city of New York. It was caused by lightning, and one thing simply, there was a cavalcade of bad events. If you're wondering how is Local 10 on the air, well, we have generator power. I don't know, Calvin, if we are using standard electricity or whether we are operating on our backup power.
And if we can, Michael, let's get Janine on the phone from Fort Lauderdale to tell us what's happening where you are. Janine.
Hi, Calvin. Well, you know, you mentioned that the Emergency Operations Center in Broward County has not been activated, and I can tell you that driving around Fort Lauderdale, I have not seen any power outages. All of the lights seem to be functioning just fine. the major intersections, Broward Boulevard, US 1, those are some big intersections, and the good news there is that lights are functioning just fine. There are some pockets of very, very heavy rain, seeming to be coming from the east. Out west, it seems to be a little bit clearer. I'm actually driving northbound on A1A right now on Lauderdale Beach, and it appears to be pretty smoothly. All the lights are working. Of course, the lifeguards have the flags up indicating that the beaches are, of course, closed. There is minor flooding on the streets on Las Olas. I saw some ponding and some road flooding. But for the most part, despite the very heavy rain, things seem to be moving just fine now, Calvin.
Yeah, heavy rain adding to an already tough problem out there in terms of so many people trying to get through those intersections there. Janine, thank you so much. And Michael, we cannot forget about the banks and the grocery stores too, and what they're having to deal with in a time like this. So
no, it's a mess for everyone. We are looking, if you are wondering, at a really important intersection in Miami-Dade County, and that is US 1 and Kendall Drive, 88th Street. And we are told that the lights, traffic lights at that intersection are working. Again, very good news. But then again, there are areas, I guess, along US 1 where they are not working. But at least at US 1 and Kendall Drive, traffic lights are functioning correctly.
Yeah, at this point, we're coming up just at the bottom of the hour right here, and we really want to let our viewers know that this situation is really unfolding, and we're sort of getting information is sort of dribbling into us, and of course we're trying to pass it on as fast as we can, so we'd like for them to bear with us. But at this time, we do want to say that the tornado warning that was in effect in East Broward County, as you mentioned, Michael, is now over. It's been canceled, so the folks there can be relieved of that. But certainly some other folks living in South Florida dealing with so many other issues, and you can see the ominous clouds right there. Still a big problem in our area, as Janine just told us. The weather really bad in some pockets of Fort Lauderdale, but on top of all of that, compounding that, the issue of not having electricity for many people, not having any traffic lights, just a major problem for so many people across South Florida right now in Miami-Dade and in Broward counties.
And let us sort of repeat some of the information that the Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Lieutenant, who joined us a few minutes ago, imparted, which I think is important information. He said if you have any major appliances on when the power outage occurred, the best thing to do is to go ahead and turn them off, because when the power comes back on, there may be a surge, and unless you have a surge protector, your television set, your computer, some expensive electronic equipment may be damaged. So the best thing he said was go ahead and turn off electrical appliances of that kind in your home so they are not damaged when the power does come back on. And by the way, speaking of power, I have been informed by our chief engineer, Darren Elaine, that Local 10 is operating on FP&L power. This is not our backup generator, so we are fortunate that we do have electricity.
And Michael, take a look at the screen right here. You can see how officers are already out there trying to deal with this traffic mess that's happening as a result of this power blackout. Let's go back now to Rad Berkey, who was live from Bird Road and 87th Avenue, a major intersection there where they had no traffic lights. What's it like now, Rad?
Power is back on, Calvin, so they had about 20-30 minutes down here with no power west of the Palmetto on Bird Road, but people had come out of their buildings because it was getting hot. But now the good news is, at least here, the power is back on. People are back in their buildings, their office buildings, their little cafes, and the most important for obviously the drivers who use busy Bird Road, the traffic lights are all working again on Bird Road. When we came through here earlier, there was one intersection where a civilian was out in the road wearing an orange vest directing traffic. But again, the good news is, at least from the Bird Road area, the power is back on.
Well, that is excellent news, Rad. And I think the picture that we just saw about a minute ago is from Alton Road on Miami Beach. And I believe that was Rob Schmidt. And I don't know if Rob has got a live signal out of there. They're trying to set up. In fact, I'm sort of hurrying things along here. Don't mean to do that, but we're all, Rob, I see you trying to see if you've got your IFB, that little gizmo in your ear, in place. And what do you see over there in Miami Beach?
Yeah, Michael, hopefully you can, yeah, it sounds like you can hear me now. Yeah, we're at about, well, Dade Boulevard and Alton, around 18th and Alton, to give you a better idea. And what we have here is just basically an unfortunate set of circumstances, because we have no power at what is probably one of the busiest intersections on South Beach. I live about 2 blocks away. I deal with this intersection every night coming home. But if you go north just a couple blocks or south a couple blocks, the power's on. So how unfortunate is it that this busy intersection is the one that loses power? But it is, and it has been a mess. Just a minute ago, before they started kind of unleashing this traffic to head south on Alton, I mean, it was backed up almost to the Miami Beach golf course, which is a long ways from here, about maybe 3 blocks away. So a real mess here on South Beach, where we're trying to figure out exactly where this power outage extends to. I just called the concierge in my building, which is at 15th and Bay, which is right on the bay, and the power's out there too. We're running on a generator in my building. So it moves west of here, it moves south of here a couple blocks, and north of here a couple blocks. But right here is a big problem area for traffic, and as we get closer to rush hour, it's only going to get worse. Luckily, it looks like the rain's going to hold off, at least in this area, for the next few minutes, so that's not going to add to it right now. But we're coming up on about 2:30, I think, in the afternoon. And as we get around 3:30, 4 o'clock, the traffic here is really going to pick up, going to become a huge problem. As you can see, we have officers out here trying to direct traffic as best they can. Not easy job, though, at this time. Michael.
Right, and more power to Miami Beach Police Department. They have obviously deployed some of their officers out there to direct traffic. FP&L now tells us that 680,000 customers have been affected by this power outage, and they say they are in the process of restoring service, and they are investigating the problem. I mean, obviously, they knew about this from the moment the power began to go out. But 680,000 customers in South Florida. Now, we assume that's in South Florida, not in Central Florida. Again, we were told that the Orlando area has also been experiencing some power outages, but we are here talking about simply South Florida, Broward and Miami-Dade counties in particular. We don't really know the situation down in Monroe County in the Keys. We are trying to find out what is going on from the upper Keys all the way down to Key West.
That is truly a remarkable number, too. Nearly 700,000 customers, affecting areas like Boca Raton, Brickell, Clearwater, Doral, Homestead, Key West. As we just talked about, we're trying to effort some information from that part. But Lake Worth, Little Havana, Pinecrest, Pompano Beach, Miramar, North Tampa, West Kendall, West Chester, and Weston. Quite a few places dealing with such a problematic issue for so many people. And right here you're looking at pictures from Sky 10 as we try to keep you up to date on the traffic situation there, but it's going to be getting worse as Rob talked about. It's 2:31 right now, but it's going to be getting worse as people begin hitting the roads. And some people, I'm sure, trying to wonder what's going to happen at some of the schools. Michael, you talked about some schools being on sort of a soft lockdown, but then you said something else is really happening, and it's not on a lockdown altogether.
We've gotten better information. Our assignment desk has been flooded by calls from parents who are worried, obviously, and with good justification about their kids and what's happening in the public schools. Well, here is what we have been told by the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and I'll just read it. It says Miami-Dade County Public Schools are not on lockdown. Schools are being held until it is safe for students to be dismissed. Students will be released only from school to the care of a parent or guardian without exception. And there's going to be no transportation, they say, as transportation has been suspended due to the massive power outages. So if your child normally takes a school bus to and from school, it appears that Miami-Dade County Public Schools is not going to put your child on a school bus until they are confident that all the traffic lights are working, or they can be assured that in fact your child is going to be safe on a school bus. So they're acting very conservatively. They're trying to make sure that all the kids within Miami-Dade County Public Schools are safe. So if you have a child in the schools, they're going to be held at the school and will only be released to a parent or guardian. Of course, all the law enforcement people we have spoken to have said it's really not a good idea right now to get in a car.
And talked about treating the four-way stops as really, without the traffic lights, I mean, really treating it as a four-way stop, making sure that people do not just keep on going through those intersections. And right here, you're looking at a live picture right now of just how bad traffic is going to be. This is really such a bad problem. I'm sure so many people getting the news at this point of the major blackout that's affected so many people, nearly 700,000 customers, and there you have it. The roads are just becoming so jammed up at this point, just choking traffic right before the rush hour begins. Let's go to Will Manso now, Local 10 Sports Director, and Will, tell us where you are and what you're seeing at this point.
Calvin, what I've been trying to do is get back to the station. I was actually over at the Calder racetrack. Those familiar with it, it's right by Dolphin Stadium, kind of on the Dade-Broward line. Was doing a story there, and when I left, it's taken me about an hour to get back near downtown Miami, near our studio. What I've seen is, just what you've talked about, intersections for, no traffic signals, so there's been chaos at intersections. People standing around at gas stations waiting for pumps to come back up and work because they can't put in gas. Traffic at a standstill in a lot of areas. Then it didn't help the fact that it started pouring. So you kind of add it all together, and it's literally from Calder to where I am now, which is near our station in Miami. It's taken me about an hour. The 79th Street, I tried to stop by my house to see if I had power in Miami Shores, and I noticed the 79th Street bridge, if you know the bridge that goes over North Bay Village, was up, and there was just traffic, backed up all the way, heading toward Biscayne Boulevard, which is a pretty good distance. Gives you an idea of the amount of gridlock that there is right now in all areas of South Florida.
Well, we'll drive very carefully. This is obviously a bad situation, and Will did point out something very important, that the 79th Street Bridge on the John F. Kennedy Causeway is in the up position. And until there is power, it's going to stay in the up position. So if you're trying to go to or from Miami Beach or over to the mainland, 79th Street is not the way to go. And I want to go back here to Sky 10 and Danny Mangano. Danny, we saw a lot of traffic moving slowly, but tell us again where you are. It appears you're coming up by Miami International Airport.
The traffic was northbound on 826, and we looked all the way down, couldn't see why it was. It was just moving really slow. And we're now traveling on the 836 going eastbound, and traffic's a little heavy, but it seems to be moving. And we went down southwest the 40th Street, Bird Road, and all the traffic lights were on.
Well, that's very good news, and in fact, you're right, the 836 eastbound does seem to be moving pretty much the way it would at this hour on a Tuesday afternoon, so that is good news indeed. Let me, a few more historical facts here that we can tell you about. In 2005, if you were here and lived through Hurricane Wilma, I certainly remember it, 6 million people were affected by Hurricane Wilma and lost power, and power was out for some people for up to 20 days. Now that, of course, is a natural disaster. This is, it appears to be a mechanical or some kind of technical disaster that has caused a major transmission line to malfunction. And again, Calvin, we don't know where that major transmission line is, but we do know, again, that 680,000 people in Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade counties have been affected by these power outages.
And Michael, I just came across some other information. It said that CNN is reporting as many as 4 million customers are without power across the entire state. That number has not been confirmed, but that's coming from another news agency. But if that is true, that is truly a major, major issue for so many people. 4 million customers were without power at some time across the state today. And this article goes on to talk about how in Miami-Dade County, students were being held at schools for safety reasons due to the large number of traffic signals, something that we talked about earlier, but students were only being released to the care of a parent or a guardian. Then it goes on to talk about just how the FAA, a spokeswoman for the FAA, Kathleen Burgeon, said that control towers at South Florida's airports are operating on engine-driven generators. She said the emergency generators kick on automatically when commercial power fails, regardless of the cause. So at some point, this also affected some of the airports in South Florida as well.
Well, but it's good to know that apparently they are still functioning, although they're certainly not working as smoothly as they ordinarily would. Well, Calvin, I just have been handed a statement, an updated statement here about Broward, about Miami-Dade County Schools. The chief spokesman for the schools, John Schuster, has sent us this statement, and I'll just read it. It says, a statewide power outage has affected schools throughout Miami-Dade County. As of 2:30 p.m., dismissal of students is being held until students can be safely transported. Buses have been deployed to school sites and will be ready to transport students as needed. Students may only be released to a parent or guardian. So the school buses have been sent to the schools, but at this moment they are not putting kids on those buses until they can be assured that the streets are safe enough to take them home. And here we, in fact, see a couple of school buses. I'm not entirely sure where Sky 10 sees these school buses, but they're out there and they are rolling. But once again, in Miami-Dade County, school kids will not be put on the buses until the school system is assured that the kids can be safely put on the buses and taken to their homes.
And what is so interesting, in my neighborhood at least, many of the parents tend to wait outside of those schools on the side of the road waiting for their kids to be dropped off. So you can only imagine, as traffic is so bad and they're trying to get to these locations to where these schools are, they're probably waiting in traffic, very frustrated, and many of them are probably lined on the roads wondering, when is my kid going to come out of school? Obviously, some of them holding the kids until, they find out, what's going on with the power outages. So that's a very interesting scenario.
Right. And what we need to find out, and we in fact are trying to find out right now, is what is going on with the Broward County Public Schools, if their policy is any different from Miami-Dade County, because once again, not to be redundant, Miami-Dade is going to keep children at the schools. When they're assured that they can get on the school buses, they're going to put them on the buses, or if a parent can get to the school, a parent or guardian, the child will be released to a parent or guardian, nobody else. But we're going to find out what the policy is right now in Broward County.
And if we can right now, we just want to reiterate that that FPNL is really trying to work to restore power to so many people across the state and right here in South Florida. But we had a number of 680,000 customers in South Florida being affected by this blackout that happened right at around 1:05 or 1:04, according to some people's clocks. I'm sure they stopped and came back on at that point when the power went out just about an hour and 30 minutes ago. So it's been a long day for so many people who are dealing not only with the heat, but also with the fact that not having any power, losing, I'm sure, probably whatever they were working on their computer. But you also have so many people wondering, what happened? What happened inside my home, and when am I going to get power back again?
Yeah, let me point out, Calvin, that if any of our viewers and have access to their computer and do have power and they want to follow what's going on, we are constantly updating local10.com. It is the most visited website in all of Florida broadcasting, and we really urge you, click onto local10.com and you will know basically what we know, and you will have it right there at your fingertips.
It is certainly a place where I'm getting a lot of updates myself as I try to update this story as much as we can. But we're looking at live pictures now from Sky 10 as we take a look over South Florida and over the so many issues that police are dealing with at this hour in terms of dealing with the traffic and rush hour. Just about 20 minutes, 19 minutes upon us here, and we'll see what's going to happen as traffic continues to grow in South Florida as we move closer to the 3 o'clock hour. But right now we've had so many accidents in Miami-Dade County, at least 9 reported accidents, and we even had one where Sky 10 was over the scene just minutes after it happened. So many people need to be aware that if you don't have to leave home, please don't leave home. Certainly this is another situation where it looks, or it appears, where there has been some sort of a traffic issue at this point. I'm reticent to say that this is I'm so hesitant to say at this point that this is an accident, but these are pictures from earlier of an accident that happened, and not quite sure where this is, but in Miami-Dade County they've dealt with so much. But police are telling people to really treat those four-way stops really as a four-way stop. Everyone needs to come to a stop and respect the other driver, and make sure you don't try to speed through and try to follow behind some of the other cars. But so much confusion on the roads as a result of these blackouts, Michael.
And Calvin, we have just received a notice from the spokeswoman for the Miami-Dade County court system, and Eunice Sigler, and Eunice says that most Dade County courts do have power at this time, and court proceedings are underway following regular schedules. Power to the Dade County Courthouse, that is the courthouse at 73 West Flagler Street, has been partially restored. However, all court proceedings scheduled for this afternoon at the Dade County Courthouse have been canceled, and they're going to be rescheduled for later. The Dade County Courthouse is where civil cases are heard. Criminal cases are heard at the Richard E. Gerstein Criminal Justice Building over there in the complex close to Jackson Memorial Hospital. So if you know somebody, or if you had a court hearing in the Dade County Courthouse this afternoon, forget it. The courthouse is being closed.
Michael, you talked about some of the blackouts dating back a few years ago, several years ago, back in the 80s and also in the early 2000 time period too. And most of those seem to reflect that it's going to be some time. Certainly we don't know how long this blackout, and for some people it's going to last, but you seem to talk about how some of them really took some time before power was restored to all of the customers.
Well, and these are complex systems, and it takes time to repair them. FP&L certainly has a lot of crews. I was thinking particularly about the 1985 power outages, which were caused by fires out in the Everglades. There are major transmission lines, if you've been out there, that run out there on the western edge of Miami-Dade and Broward counties, and the fires from the Everglades damaged some of those transmission lines. But on the other hand, this time we don't know where the failure to a major transmission line is. We are still trying to get somebody from FP&L on the phone to give us some good, solid, reliable information. All they have said to us so far is that it is a power outages affecting Palm Beach, Broward, Miami-Dade counties, 680,000 people without power. But as we have heard from our reporters scattered throughout the area, that it is intermittent. Some areas have power, some don't, some get it back and then they lose it. So it is a constantly changing situation.
No question about that. And but so many people really need to, if they are headed out or if they are out on the road, that they need to really be cautious about the traffic situation that's sort of unfolding right now. You can see here from Sky 10 that traffic is moving, at least on this interstate. We don't know where this is exactly, but on some of the side streets and some of the local roads there, that we really need to be careful. When people are heading out, people really need to be careful as to how they drive when they come to an intersection, really causing some major problems for so many people as they try to just get to where they need to be. And I'm sure many parents are trying to get to schools, trying to pick up their child, but at this point, the best advice is certainly to be patient and don't try to zip through some of those intersections.
Right. I think that if I recall, this shot is from the vicinity of 62nd Street and I-95. Clearly, I-95 as a limited access freeway is not so affected as the surface streets, and there's some shots of some of those streets where power traffic lights are working, or in some areas are not. Calvin, I just have received a report that in the Tampa Bay area, they have power outages as well. 50,000 people in the Tampa Bay area are without power. They are not served by FP&L. Tampa Electric Company, TECO, serves people in that area. And it says here that reports from Tampa and areas around it, as far east as Lakeland, as far north as Tarpon Springs, south to St. Petersburg, some areas east of Tampa have lost power and had it restored. All right, now we are told that Florida Power and Light, a spokesperson, is on the phone. So let's go to that person. And hello, and who's speaking, please?
Hi, this is Michael Villafana.
Michael Villafana, an old friend. Michael, it's good to hear from you. And just give us the information. What is going on, and what are you doing to fix it?
Well, we have widespread outages in the South Florida area and throughout our service territory since possibly 1 o'clock this afternoon. We are still investigating the cause of the outages. what we estimate that we have about 600,000 to 800,000 customers that were affected. We believe that we can restore service to most customers affected by approximately within the next 2 hours.
And Michael, we did have word earlier that it was a major transmission line failure. Can you pinpoint exactly which line it was and what happened?
We do not have that as of yet. We are investigating the cause of the outage. But Michael, I can't tell you right now whether it was a transmission failure that has caused this outage, but we are still investigating what has caused it.
And Michael, we're speaking to Michael Villafana from Florida Power and Light. Michael, the repair situation, I mean, I know you have a huge number of people, personnel, technicians who go out in this situation. Have you mobilized those people?
Yes, we have. Michael, they've been mobilized from almost the minute that it started. And what occurs in these kinds of outage situations, that of course some feeder lines may be out. The feeder line in and of itself is not effective, but nevertheless, for safety reasons, our crews have to go out there and restore power in a very systematic process.
Right.
So there is a safety involved not only for the customer, but as well as for our crews.
Of course,
that's exactly what they're doing right now.
That's understood. Now, here's a question I need to ask you. We have heard unconfirmed reports that this power outage was caused by some kind of reactor problem at the Turkey Point plant, which is, of course, a nuclear facility. Is that true?
We have not heard that at all, and that's not what we're reporting from the company.
And is this a case of the system trying to protect itself, perhaps, by going into rotating blackouts? Is that a possibility too, Michael?
Well, if in some circumstances that could be the case, what happens again is that the lines have a safety feature, and once the load factor is affected, the line will shut down as a precaution. That could be the case here. That's what happens in some outages. We're not saying that's what happened here because we're still investigating, but yes, indeed, that could be one aspect of it.
All right, Michael, knowing that you are still investigating and a lot of things need to be answered, but let's talk a little about weather. I mean, here we have just gone through this incredibly unseasonable hot spell, which has certainly put a huge demand on your system. Is there some cause and effect there?
Well, that also could be an aspect of it. We need to investigate that. Certainly, from day to day, there is a capacity issue. That is how much electricity is used by our customers. But right now, Michael, I could not tell you because we're still in the process of investigation.
Even more importantly, too, Michael, I really emphasize for the people who are listening, how quickly can you restore power to some of the customers out there?
What we're saying right now is we hope to have most customers affected by the current outage within approximately the next 2 hours.
Michael, we have also seen reports that there have been power outages in the Orlando area and in the Tampa Bay area. Is it possible that whatever problems FP&L is having have sort of affected them, or they have the problems and it affected FP&L?
Well, that's all part of what we will be looking at. Certainly, the entire electrical grid in the state of Florida is interconnected, and we work very closely with the other utilities, whether they're in the investor-owned utilities or the municipal utilities. And so all that is one aspect that needs to be looked at.
All right, so let's sort of sum this up, and we're very glad to get you on, Michael Villafana of Florida Power and Light. Michael, you say you believe that within 2 hours all power can be restored.
We believe that we can have power restored to most customers affected within approximately 2 hours. And we're restoring the system right now in a very systematic process to ensure the safe operation of all our lines and for the safety of our customers. And we still are investigating the cause of the outage, which of course is affecting, we are estimating right now, between 600,000 to 800,000 customers.
Mm-hmm. And when you say most of the customers, out of the, say, perhaps worst case scenario, 800,000 customers affected by this, what is most?
Most would be the great majority of them. Certainly, when you have
700,000, 750,000.
Oh no, it would be the great majority. I mean, we're giving an estimate right now because we're trying to get a gauge on how many customers are out. But when I say that the majority of them will be restored, I would say that you're looking at 99% or almost 100%. But you always have in these kind of outages some residual effects that may be on a power line, on either a feeder or a distribution line that we're going to have to take a look at more closely, and that may impact pockets of neighborhoods, pockets of customers that will take a little longer to restore.
And Michael, and I know I certainly don't want to put you on the spot right here, but this is information that I'm seeing for the first time myself, but I just want to read something to you. It says, both of the nuclear reactors at FP&L's Turkey Point facility, as well as 2 oil-burning plants, tripped off unexpectedly Tuesday. This is according to Ken Clark, a spokesman for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's regional office in Atlanta. It was not immediately clear whether the shutdown was triggered by problems at the plant or in the regional electrical grid, he said. He says, we have reports that the nuclear unit scrammed, which means experience unexpected shutdowns, but we do not know why at this point. Can you respond to that?
No, at this present moment I can't. That's part of the investigation. If the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is saying that right now, they may have some information that we don't have at the moment, or is part of the investigation that is taking place. Before we pronounce or give an answer to an investigation, we wanted to make sure that we can provide our customers with the most reliable information. Certainly, what you have mentioned there is part and parcel of transmission issues, or for that matter, triggering of power plants. That could be part of all this. So we will have to wait and see.
Okay, Michael, it's Michael Putney again. The Associated Press is quoting an unidentified Florida Power and Light spokesman as saying that these power outages started when the company shut down a nuclear reactor at Turkey Point. Here's the name. Spokesman Bob Coleman told a Tampa Bay area TV station the company shut down 2 nuclear generators at its Turkey Point plant south of Miami. And when that happened, he said the entire state of Florida began to run low on electricity. And then when the supply gets low, then the circuits have to be disconnected and there is a shutoff. So is your colleague Bob Coleman got information you don't have?
Right now, I don't have that information. Bob Coleman does work for the company. He's in the northern part of our service territory, and he may be closer to some of the issues that occurred in that area than I am. But right now, Michael, I don't have that information.
And Mr. Coleman seemed to give a much more of a bleak outlook in terms of when power could be restored. He says within 10 hours.
Well, right now we feel that we can restore power in approximately 2.
Okay.
All right, Michael Villafana of Florida Power and Light. We will be back with you. Michael, thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, in just a couple of minutes, we are told that Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Alvarez is going to speak from the Emergency Operations Center, update us on what he knows, and I suspect his information is probably pretty good. But Calvin, this Associated Press story quoting this FP&L spokesman, not the gentleman whom we just spoke to, as saying that this all began when FP&L shut down its nuclear reactor at Turkey Point for safety reasons. Clearly, if that's the case, then we are, we have to learn a lot more about what went on down at Turkey Point.
No question about that. And if we can, Michael, we're just about 3 minutes before the top of the hour right now. And if we can, I'd like to sort of reestablish ourselves with our viewers and let them know what's happening and sort of the new information that we know, as well as going back. It's been 2 hours now for some people without power. And so let's sort of let them know what we know at this point in terms of the schools and so on and so forth. And Michael, I will certainly sort of defer to you and allow you to tell us about the schools at this point in terms of what you know and the latest information that you might have.
All right, here is the latest statement that we received, Calvin, from the Miami-Dade County Public Schools. Its chief spokesman says that a, quote, statewide power outage has affected schools throughout Miami-Dade County. As of 2:30 this afternoon, dismissal of students was being held. They were not going to be dismissed until the students could be safely transported. The buses have been deployed to school sites and they are standing by ready to transport students, quote, as needed, end quote. Students may be released to a parent or guardian who can get to the schools, but only to a parent or guardian. That is the situation with Miami-Dade Public Schools. All right, here is Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Alvarez getting ready to speak to us. This is the Emergency Operations Center of Miami-Dade County.
He's allowing reporters right now to get situated so he can begin speaking to us.
All right, we are waiting for Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Alvarez to speak. He is out there at the county's Emergency Operations Center, and I believe the gentleman standing to his left is Bobby Parker, the Miami-Dade County Police Director. The Operations Center is a place where in emergency situations, agency heads gather, and we are now waiting for the mayor to speak. I think he doesn't know if we're ready, but we are ready to hear him.
Good afternoon. As you all know, Dade County has experienced a major power outage starting about 1:15 this afternoon. In conversations with Florida Power and Light, they believe that what occurred, the power outage, was a process within a technical process within their administration. There's absolutely no indication or evidence that there's any foul play involved in what has occurred, not only in Dade County, but in other counties just north of us. So let me reiterate that. Our Department of Homeland Security has been in contact with the state and federal agencies and Florida Power and Light. There's absolutely no indication whatsoever that there's any foul play involved in this power outage that we've experienced today. Regarding public safety, I have the director of the police department here and the chief of our fire department. They are more than ready. They have extra manpower on duty to address any concerns that might come up. There's no indication of any extra calls. The fire department has been responding to some calls regarding people being stuck in elevators, but besides that, there are no other calls that are related to this power outage. Our Emergency Operations Center is at a level 2, which means that we've called in representatives from several different county departments to be here. I can tell you that our airport and our seaport are running. There was at the airport there was some slight delays, but that's about it. We've been in communications with our school system, and I know that there's been a lot of information coming out of there. They're on a normal schedule now. Dismissals will be on a regular schedule, and their buses will be taking the kids home. I know there was a lot of concern about whether the buses were going to be operating or not. They will be. Our transit agency, the Metro Rail, the South Line is working. Their North Line is trying to come back on, but we've got buses to take people from the Metro Rail stations to wherever they need to go. And our Metro Mover is up and running. If anybody has any questions, just like during any emergencies, please call our 311 number. We've got operators there that will assist you in any way that they possibly can. But again, let me reiterate the fact that there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that the power outage that we've experienced today is as a result of any criminal activity. It was just a procedural problem within FP&L. They have informed us that within the next couple of hours that power should be up in Dade County for all their customers. So we've got a couple more hours to go, and that should be it. Quite frankly, I wouldn't describe them as a big problem. It's been a massive inconvenience because of the traffic congestion. You can't describe this as an emergency because it has not. It's just the fact that we have a traffic problem to begin with. So when power outage goes off and most of our traffic lights go out, then we have some traffic-related problems. But in talking to the director of the police department and the fire chief, there's really nothing of any significance that we've experienced in the last couple of hours that have come up.
How much of the county is actually out? The entire county or just pockets?
You know, in talking to FP&L, they said major power outage. They can't tell me whether it's entire Dade County or not. They can't say that. They have said that it wasn't only Dade County, it was Broward and other counties just north of us. So, you know, they don't know. When I talked to them, they didn't know the reason as to why, but it involved a number of counties.
At this point, how much is back on?
Pretty much. They just told me before I came here that within the next couple of hours, we should have power in Dade County. Most of it, yeah.
Did FP&L give you any indication how the power is coming back on? Is it in pockets? Is it a cascade effect?
That's exactly how it's coming up, and I don't know. We wish we had somebody here from FP&L so that they could guide you through this. I'm not an expert, and I don't pretend to be. They've explained it, and it's a matter of just a cascading effect.
Can you tell us anything about the source of this? I mean, you said it was a technical problem within FP&L and not a criminal problem, but we heard that it actually started near or at Turkey Point nuclear plant.
I can't answer that, Ari. I mean, but what I can assure people is that this was something technical. It wasn't anything criminal related. I know there was some concerns in some municipalities as to what had occurred in Turkey Point, or what was the reason for it. It's just within their system, something that occurred that triggered this power outage.
Is there any chance that this procedural problem at Turkey Point might be a cause of a larger, more dangerous problem at the nuclear facility?
There's no indication of that whatsoever, and we haven't been told that. As a matter of fact, they're very optimistic that within the next couple hours we'll have power back.
Were you briefed by the folks at Turkey Point?
I was briefed by the folks at FP&L, so yes. Sí, como que no. Como ustedes saben, la electricidad se fue aproximadamente a la 1 de la tarde.
And if we can, that's Miami-Dade Mayor Carlos Alvarez just giving us a briefing on what exactly he has learned as a result of this rolling blackout in Miami-Dade County, Broward counties, just all over South Florida. FP&L reporting as many as 800,000 customers affected. But just to give you a brief rundown of what he just said, he says there's no indication of foul play. He really wanted to emphasize that. He says just a procedural problem with FP&L at this point, and his Department of Homeland Security has been in touch with federal officials to make sure that no foul play is involved here. There is no indication of any extra calls, too, he said, as a result of this, of people getting stuck in elevators or that sort of thing.
Well, yeah, he did say, Calvin, that the Miami-Dade Fire Rescue had received calls of some people stuck in elevators. The mayor called it, quote, a massive inconvenience as opposed to an emergency. On the other hand, if you were stuck in an elevator or you're driving down the street and there are no functioning traffic lights and you're trying to get your child from school and you can't, you may see this a little bit differently than the mayor. We are looking at some live pictures now from Turkey Point. Oh, that is tape. I'm sorry, this is tape.
Well, Michael, this is actually a great time to bring in Roger Hanna, who is going to really expound on the situation happening right now at Turkey Point. He is with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, the regional office in Atlanta, Georgia. And Roger, thank you so much for joining us at this hour. Are you there with us?
I'm here.
Okay, we can barely hear you, so I don't know if that's on our end or on your end, but maybe perhaps you can speak into the phone a little bit better, but just sort of give us an idea, because everything seems to really point to Turkey Point at this point. So just sort of give us an idea of what we're dealing with and what may have happened.
Well, I think at this point we're not sure, either the NRC or FPL is sure
whether the Turkey Point plant contributed to the outages or whether the plant was actually a victim of these power outages. We were notified by FBL that at approximately 1:09 this afternoon, both units at Turkey Point tripped offline due to under voltage on one of the off-site power supplies coming into the plant. So, as I said, it could have been that the plant suffered the same fate that many of the other people in South Florida suffered. Both units were shut down safely. All the safety systems worked. They're currently in a hot shutdown condition and will remain so until they're able to review things. And then at the appropriate time, those units will be coming back up.
Roger, could you explain to us when you say the units tripped off because of under voltage? Just explain what you mean by that.
Nuclear power plants require an off-site power supply, and I know that sounds a little unusual, but in the process of making electricity at a nuclear plant, they're required to have power coming into the plant in the event that the plant should have to shut down to have electricity to bring the plant into a safe condition. And if there are problems with either the source or the voltage on that line coming in, then a signal is sent to the plant to safely shut the plant down. So control rods go into the reactor and the plant begins the process of shutting down.
So as far as the NRC knows at this moment, all the systems at Turkey Point where there are these two nuclear generators work correctly as far as you know?
That's correct. As far as we know, all the safety systems work, the plant's in a safe condition, and appears that, as the mayor was saying earlier, that there appears to be no foul play or anything involved. It appears to be some sort of technical problem related to the voltage on the off-site power supply coming into the plant.
All right, so, and once again, as you said at the outset here, it's still not clear whether Turkey Point contributed to the problem or was a victim of the problem.
That's correct. The company is still reviewing that, and our resident inspectors are at the site still looking at the same situation.
And so bottom line here, it seems from both the tone and the words you are using, is that the NRC is not terribly concerned about anything being amiss at Turkey Point.
That would be a correct assessment.
All right, Roger Hanna of the NRC, thank you so much for joining us and setting our minds at ease a little bit about Turkey Point, since it is a nuclear-powered plant, 2 generators down there run by nuclear power, and this is not, according to Roger Hanna of the NRC, anything related to a malfunction at Turkey Point.
What is so interesting, too, is for the folks who are listening to all of this at home, it's really technical, it's really confusing, but according to FP&L, they're saying in 2 hours, as well as that's what they told Miami-Dade Mayor Carlos Alvarez, in 2 hours, they could have their power restored, at least in most areas. And when I asked him what most meant, he said a majority, possibly 99%. That is certainly good news. So we'll say, what, 5 o'clock, Michael? I guess most people, based on that 2-hour number, most people should have their power restored.
Well, maybe that is a hopeful estimate, but let's hope that, in fact, FP&L's Michael Villafana is right. On the other hand, to be realistic, we've got to point out that another FP&L spokesman, a fellow named Bob Coleman, who apparently works upstate, had told the media in the Tampa Bay area that he thought it could be up to 10 hours before power is restored around the state. And we should point out, if you're just joining us, that there have been power outages that we have learned of in the Orlando area and in the Tampa Bay area, so we are not alone. This is one of those, to use a silly analogy perhaps, hip bone connected to the leg bone, one power grid, one power system is connected to another one.
Yeah, we have 2 groups. You have the FP&L folks, you have the NRC people, Nuclear Regulatory Commission out of the regional office out of Atlanta saying one thing, and FP&L saying another. But as you said, they're all connected. In some way, something went wrong. We know that much at least, and nearly 800,000 people are probably saying the same thing. What in the heck did go wrong? But at any rate, no matter what went wrong, get my power back on as soon as possible, especially with these record hot temperatures we're having in February too as well. And so many people on the roads too, about to hit the roads at 312 right now. They're going to be saying the same thing. Get the traffic lights back on and let's get this chaos, what is already a chaotic situation in rush hour, let's try to calm this thing down.
And if you are wondering what you are looking at, this is videotape of the Turkey Point nuclear facility. There are 2 generators down there run by nuclear power. This is not a live picture. This is videotape, and we're showing it to you because it's still not clear whether this power outage began there or whether Turkey Point was the victim of power outages. Roger Hanna of the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Agency Commission, whom we just spoke to, Mr. Hanna said that both units at Turkey Point tripped off at 1:09 this afternoon when there was a problem of under voltage, as he put it, with power coming in to Turkey Point. As he explained, Turkey Point has to have an outside source of electrical power to handle any kind of a malfunction within their own system. But it's still not clear whether Turkey Point was the genesis of this problem or whether they simply were the victims of this whole system outage, where again we have up to 800,000 people in Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade counties who are without power. But a spokesman told us just a few minutes ago that he thought within 2 hours all power could be restored, and Miami-Dade County Mayor Carlos Alvarez expressed confidence as well. If it is back by 5 o'clock, then the homeward commute certainly would be a lot easier. Calvin, if the power is not back on throughout South Florida by 5 o'clock, the commute home for several 100,000 people is going to be an even bigger nightmare than usual.
Could be disastrous. And speaking of that commute, the afternoon commute, someone who makes that every single day, Local 10 anchor Lori Jennings on the phone with us once again. And Lori, what are you finding out as you hit the road?
Wow, Calvin, it is bad out here, and I just hope I'm glad I have a full tank of gas. I just spoke to Dwight Lauderdale, and he was the first call I was able to get through in about half an hour. That's equally frustrating as the traffic is the lack of cell phone service. I think it's just so overloaded that you just can't reach anyone, and you can't email on your BlackBerries. Like, just nothing is going through. So all of a sudden, in the last few minutes, I've been able to email and call again. So I was able to reach you. Dwight said he's been on the road for 2 hours, and he has only reached downtown Miami. That distance normally would have taken him 25 minutes. That gives you an idea of the kind of slow pace. Thank goodness the lights are back on. You know, lights seem to have come on right around the 2:30 hour, at least in this area, south of downtown Miami, all through Coconut Grove and Coral Gables and South Miami. The power did come back, so at least the traffic lights are working. But the volume of people out is just unbelievable. So it is just very, very slow going. And you really, Dwight decided to go through downtown. I'm going to try my best on 95. I'm trying to get on here in the area of Key Biscayne, and we'll just see how it goes. Hopefully we'll see you before the next hour comes around.
Well, take care, Lori. We want you to arrive here safely, and your co-anchor and our friend Dwight Lauderdale is on the phone too now, I believe. Dwight, are you there?
Yes, Michael, I'm on Brickell Avenue. Let's see, I'm up to, an hour and 45 minutes now to make a 14-mile journey, but it's just the sheer volume. In the downtown area, I came up from Palmetto Bay north, and the lights were on in Coconut Grove, and the lights are on in the Brickell Financial District. It's just the sheer volume of traffic, and the fact that we still have a job to do because a lot of our drivers don't understand what a four-way stop means and how to react.
Well, you are not the first one to remark on that. We have had City of Miami Police, Lieutenant Pat Santangelo of the Florida Highway Patrol. Everybody is saying if you come up on an intersection and the light is not working, you must treat that as a four-way stop. And unfortunately, not everybody understands that.
And if they would simply do that, Michael, it would move the traffic because a car would move, in order. I think our drivers just don't understand how it works. Just to briefly explain it, as you approach the intersection, the first person who approaches goes, and then it goes in a clockwise direction, and all four people go. If you arrive at the intersection at the same time, you yield to the driver on your right. And if people would simply do that as opposed to two or three cars going or a stream of cars, and that's what's happening out here, it just destroys the whole flow.
Dwight, I'm curious to learn here if you were at home at 1 o'clock and did your power go out as well, and you wonder what is going on?
Well, it was a while before I realized what was going on simply because I have a generator, and it kicked in right away. And after about 15 or 20 minutes or so, I called a neighbor or so just to find out if their power was out, and that's when I realized what was going on. And then, of course, I flipped over and watched your coverage and tried to get out of the house as quickly as possible.
Well,
but down in Palmetto Bay, there's no power at all.
All right, Dwight
At least there
Lauderdale.
wasn't an hour and 45 minutes ago. It might be back on now, but I've been in the car since, what, 1:30?
Right. Well, Dwight, I know it's easy for me standing here in the Local 10 newsroom to say, be patient, but we want you to arrive safely. I know it's extremely frustrating out there on the roads, but we will see you shortly to join our coverage.
I will be there as quickly as I can get there, but
all right.
It's moving at a snail's pace, obviously, because of the sheer volume.
We understand, Dwight. All right, we do have an update now from the Miami-Dade County Public Schools, and what the school system is saying is that Miami-Dade County Public Schools are being dismissed. The dismissal is underway, and it's going to follow the regular schedule as closely as possible. The buses have been deployed to school sites as scheduled. They are now beginning to take students, so the buses are starting to roll in Miami-Dade County. And we are also told that in Broward, where early on there were reports of just 6 schools that had been affected and had lost power, that for the most part, Broward County Public Schools are operating on a normal schedule. We also have been contacted by the Miami-Dade County Archdiocesan schools. The Catholic schools are no longer in lockdown mode, and the parents are able to pick up their students from all Archdiocesan schools here in South Florida. And that comment from the Catholic Archdiocese.
And Michael, Miami-Dade Mayor Carlos Alvarez did say that if anyone needed any sort of assistance, call the 311 phone number. Do not call the 911 phone number. Call 311. But if you do have an emergency, of course, dial 911. But if you're calling just to find out more information or just to get assistance of some sort, call 311. Carlos Alvarez did go on to say that that the county was at a level 2 readiness, and MIA did have some issues. They had some delays. Miami International Airport, and right now we have Terrell Fournet, who is there for us to give us an update as to what you have right there. Terrell.
Hey, good afternoon, Calvin. We are on the ground here at Miami International Airport, and according to some people who work here and just taking a gander at some of the boards around the airport, it does appear that they did have a number of delays, mostly, though, arrivals, believe it or not, from planes that are coming in from other areas. But it does look like that they have just about caught up with all of the planes that were coming in to land here at Miami International Airport. There are not many delays, though, it appears, with departing flights. Lines here at the airport are just about as normal, so this did not cause as big as a disruption as we first thought. Calvin?
Any idea how many departure delays there were? Any idea how many delays there were overall, Terrell?
You know, if we had to guess, we would probably put that number at about 24 or so, and that's just kind of taking a look at some of the boards around. We're still in the process of getting around the entire airport, but as you know, it's divided by airlines and sections and things of that nature. But that 24 number is from both the departing flights and arriving flights, and most of that is, of course, for flights that were arriving.
Okay, Terrell, thank you for that, and certainly we'll check back in with you if need be. And Miami International Airport having, as Terrell just said, roughly about 24 delays, departure delays, arrival delays there.
Well, all in all, maybe that is not such a bad record given the circumstances. Kelvin, we want to go to Brian Rick of the Florida Department of Transportation, who is on the line with us. Brian, good afternoon.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm doing well, but then again, I'm not sitting behind the wheel in a car that is stuck in traffic or not in an elevator that is stuck someplace in a building. What can you tell us about DOT's response to this situation, Brian?
Okay, well, as you know, Miami-Dade County did partially activate the Emergency Operations Center. We're an active partner with them, and basically, under such circumstances, we are put on standby awaiting any kind of special requests for assistance and whatnot. In speaking to our Transportation Management Center folks, I learned that our roadways are moving along as they normally do. There is a little bit of congestion northbound, but that also is kind of, it happens normally. Beyond that, we do have road rangers out there as we normally do, ready to render assistance should vehicles become stalled. My main advice to people is, especially if they are driving on roads and through intersections where the traffic signals are not working due to the power outages, they should use extra caution, approach an intersection, treat it as if it were a four-way stop sign. Again, this is if there are not any law enforcement officers present. And of course, if there are law enforcement officers present, please pay close attention, obey those officers. They will get you through that intersection.
Yeah.
Also, be aware that some people are, a little bit anxious due to the situation. Be patient and courteous.
Well, it's all good advice. And Brian, let me ask you, for people who are driving on the turnpike or on the roadways and use a SunPass, I don't know if all the SunPass, if the electricity is working, are you going to forgive anybody who goes through a SunPass lane and doesn't get a beep?
I don't have that information, and I would have to try to get you to someone who does. You would have to speak to someone through at the SunPass Center.
Okay, Brian Rick of Florida Department of Transportation. Brian, thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
And let's move on now to our colleague Rad Berkey. I think, Rad, did you go to a school? And if so, what is the situation there?
Yes, Michael, we were down in the Kendall area driving along Kendall Drive where the power is on. Now, we had heard some reports that there were some power outages in the Kendall area. At least in the areas we have been driving in, the power was back on if it was ever off. The school we visited was Debonair Elementary, and the principal there told us that they never did lose power. They were dismissal was just starting there. Debonair is one of those, it's K through 8, I believe now. And so there are a lot of kids around there, but everything seemed to be normal. Parents were picking them up. There was one private transportation school bus there. As I think you've been reporting, Dade County school buses will start rolling again at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I can answer one question that you just asked Brian Rick about the SunPass.
Mm-hmm.
We came down on the turnpike, went through the Bird Road toll, and the SunPass did click and beep. So at least there, the power is working, and the SunPass went off as normal.
Well, maybe that's good advice for anybody who simply wants to blow through a SunPass lane who doesn't have a transponder. They're going to take a picture of you and send you a little notice, so don't do that. Rad, get back to us when you have anything else, and we appreciate it. Calvin, here is the story from the Associated Press that has just moved. It says, Florida's largest utility shut down a nuclear reactor south of Miami on Tuesday, causing sporadic power outages affecting more than 3 million people across the southern end of the state. Authorities did not specify the cause of the shutdown, but say there were no safety concerns. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission says the two Florida Power and Light nuclear reactors at its Turkey Point plant, 30 miles south of Miami, automatically shut down. Two other power plants farther north, Crystal River and St. Lucie twin reactors, are continuing to operate. That jibes, of course, with what both Michael Villafana of FPNL and Roger Hanna of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission told us just a few minutes ago.
Let's get an update now from Glenna Milberg, live in Miami-Dade County with some information for us. Glenna?
Hello, everybody. We are at Miami-Dade's Office of Emergency Management. Mayor Carlos Alvarez, if you've been with us, came out to give us an update, and FPNL representatives have been filling them in. So I have some new numbers, at least for people who live in Miami-Dade.
Right now, 200,000 customers are still without power. However, that's down from 700,000 in Miami-Dade at peak time. So it does look like slowly but surely FP&L is being able to get the power on. And the best news of all, you might say, is that FP&L estimates between 4:45 to 6 o'clock tonight, everybody in the county will have electricity again. We're trying to get them to talk about Broward County, Palm Beach, and Monroe as well. And if we get those numbers, I'll come back and let you know. But it does look like FP&L will be able to have everybody with electricity by nightfall, which is very important because even though Mayor Carlos Alvarez was saying this is characterized as really an inconvenience and not a big emergency, there really was a bit of an emergency on the roadways of all counties when those lights went out. So this inconvenience has been a real issue for public safety. And just a little while ago, we were able to talk to Miami-Dade Police Director Robert Parker to fill us in on how his department handled that. At what point did that happen and what kind of plan is deployed?
But, you know, it was kind of incidental that we were having mobile field force training today. So we canceled the mobile field force training. That's a 75-man complement of people who are now available in manning traffic intersections.
So they were already on the streets? You just redirected
They were
them?
scheduled to come on duty at 2 o'clock and perform mobile field force training. So we have those on the street, as well as we held over a number of individuals from their day shift who would be getting off at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. And kept them available for in the event that we don't have power back. My understanding is that they will be back in a couple of hours, so that may not be necessary.
So the public safety function was really about traffic?
It is bad traffic inconvenience, of course, people having a sense of less than secure because the lights are not on, that kind of situation, but no actual detriments to public safety.
No. Again, the director said that might all change if the power outage were to last past dark, and that is why this emergency operations center remains on level 2 activation of the 3. So it's not an emergency alert, but it is a preparation alert. And Brian, can we turn the camera around and sort of see through the window here? Bear with us here while we try to give you a look at what that means. Level 2 activation means a lot of the county services, all of the county departments and representatives of, are called in. They have the shades partially drawn, but I think you can get a sense of a lot of people in the war room, as I've been calling it here, monitoring the phones, monitoring the situation with schools, the airport, the seaport, the hospitals, water management, public safety. Every municipality and city in the county as well has representatives here, and this is sort of the central information clearinghouse. This will remain on level 2 for the time being until FP&L manages to get everybody up and working again. So that is the situation from here.
And Glenna, are you aware, and were you able to ask the police director, assuming that, you know, the sun will set at 6:14, assuming that this blackout lasts beyond that point, is there some kind of curfew that will go into effect? Is that part of the level 2 readiness, or were you able to ask him if they're going to enact that?
That's an interesting question. He did not speak of a curfew, and frankly, no one asked. And I don't know that that's the case. I'm going to presume that if it wasn't spoken of yet, there is nothing in place. I think the worry about nightfall is more for the streets and traffic and public safety issues in that account. But I will find that out, and as we get closer to that point, we'll certainly let anyone know if that is the case. But let me say again, FP&L is telling the people here, the mayor's office and the manager and the counties, that the utility believes it can have everybody back with electricity by 6 o'clock tonight.
Well, that is certainly very good news if they can do that. Glenna Moberg live at the Miami-Dade EOC. Let's go now live to Roger Losi, who is in Davie. And Roger, I don't know your location, but tell us where you are and what you see right there.
Well, I'll show you, Michael. We're at Griffin Road and University. Let me step out of the way, and John, you can zoom in there and you can see that the traffic lights are operational. That is a good sign. Traffic moving smoothly here through this very busy intersection. It appears appears, Michael, that these power outages here in Broward County, from what we can tell, were mostly limited to southwest Broward County. We're talking about cities like Davie, Cooper City, Pembroke Pines, Southwest Ranches. Those are the areas that seem to have been affected, and not all were affected the same. Some people we talked to said their lights just flickered for a second. Some said that their power was out for 5 minutes. Others, restaurants and some businesses along University Drive just north of here, they lost power for about an hour or so. But it does appear that the power is coming back on in most of these areas. We are told, though, that there are still some areas down in Pembroke Pines that are still out. We have a crew headed that way to check that out. Here's some interesting some information, though. We can tell you that Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport never lost power today. The South Broward Hospital District, that's the Memorial Hospital group, they never lost power either. Tri-Rail is operating normally up here in Broward County at this hour, and from what we have been able to gather today, there were only really 4 schools in Broward County that were affected by this power outage today. We're talking about Ely High School, the Nova Schools, Pines Middle, and McNabb Middle School, I believe, in Pompano Beach. But again, here in Davie, the intersection of Griffin Road and University, traffic is flowing normally. The power, it seems to be coming back on here in southwest Broward County, Michael, the part of the county that seemed to have been affected most by these power outages.
Well, that is very good news, Roger Lucy in Davie. Thank you very much. Let's go to Rob Schmidt now, who is live in Miami Springs, a small community just north of Miami International Airport. And Rob, if you can join us, tell us what you see there in Miami Springs.
Yeah, Michael, actually Miami Shores. We're at about 103rd Street and Northeast 2nd Avenue here in Miami Shores, and reporting more good news, the best kind, right? We got traffic flowing smoothly here at this intersection, and basically what we did, we were in South Beach, if for viewers who've been watching for the last half hour or so, in South Beach, and we went all the way up Miami Beach, cut across the JFK Causeway, and came over across up Biscayne. And I can't even count, I could probably count on one hand the amount of lights that I saw that were still out, and they were all minor traffic lights in little neighborhoods and stuff like that. The major intersections, all pretty clear now, and that's the good news. And I think the numbers are getting down around 200,000 you reported just a couple minutes ago as far as people still having the power out, and they're saying 6 o'clock now. So things moving in the right direction, and intersections like this looking clean, no more police officers standing outside directing traffic. Things got back to normal pretty quick, so as far as it goes right now, things are looking pretty successful. All cleared up here in Miami Shores. We haven't found one traffic light in Miami Shores that is out, and our drive from South Beach all the way up here only ran into a couple. Michael.
And Rob, did you say you came across the John F. Kennedy Causeway, 79th Street? Because
yes.
We had an earlier report that the bridge there was stuck or left in the up position, so clearly they got power and the bridge was down.
Right, yeah, and that's actually what we were checking on when we went up that way. We went across the JFK and unconfirmed. So maybe it was, maybe it wasn't for a time being. We can't tell, but smooth sailing across there now, which is good news as we get closer to rush hour. A lot of people are going to be coming home to Miami Beach. That's Causeway all cleared up, and we also went across the 195 earlier in the day, and that was clear as well. So hopefully tonight just be your standard rush hour traffic, as it looks like the storm is north of here in Fort Lauderdale. Right. Traffic lights back on. Looks like good news to me, Michael.
Well, it sounds like the news is getting better. Rob Schmidt live in Miami Shores. And let's go now on the phone to Detective Nelda Fonticella of Miami-Dade Police. And Detective Fonticella, what can you tell us about the Miami-Dade Police Department and what your department is doing right now?
Well, we do have our command post here at headquarters up and working. We are in touch with all the district commanders so that they provide us information as far as any problems in any of their districts. So far, we do have officers manning all the or most of the major intersections where the traffic lights are out, but we are getting information the power is coming back to most areas.
And that is certainly the good news, because Glenna has talked about how the number was up as high as 700,000 at one point and now down to 200,000 customers who are still without power at this point.
Yes, and according to what the mayor was telling us, I believe it's going to be a couple of hours before everyone else has power, so it shouldn't be too long. Hopefully by the time rush hour comes here, we'll be able to have all the traffic lights working.
And Nelda, I believe that Director Parker, your boss, told our Glenn Milberg that there had been some kind of a mobile field force training exercise underway today. Did that give you a couple of extra people to put out on this problem?
Yes, we have been in our mobile field force training for a few weeks now. We did have officers, extra officers available. We were able to use them. But like I said, at this point, things look like they're getting better, and we should be able to get back to normal pretty soon.
So you are not looking at anything as we have during a hurricane where you really have a 12 and 12 kind of configuration where officers come on, work 12, and then go off for 12 hours. You're going to work a regular shift then?
Right. It looks that way. By no stretch of the imagination is this anything like a hurricane at all. You know, we've lost power for a couple hours, but it looks like we've got everything under control. As soon as the FPL gets us all up, it should be back to normal.
But just in case it does not happen by the 5 o'clock hour and you still have some blackouts in some areas, are there plans in place to deal with that as well, Nelda?
We'll definitely have some officers stay over if that happens.
All right, Detective Nelda Fonticello, always good to speak with you, Nelda. Thank you very much.
Good talking to you. Bye-bye.
All right, let's kind of recap here for a minute. I think some of the major headlines of this story, and it really deals with Florida Power and Light saying that at 1:09 this afternoon, the nuclear reactors, and there are 2 of them at Turkey Point, were tripped offline because they had a problem with what is they described as under voltage. In other words, standard power coming into the Turkey Point nuclear plant was insufficient, and that tripped off the reactors, and those reactors are the principal source of electricity for several million people in South Florida. Now, the spokesman from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission pointed out that it is too early to know whether the Turkey Point plant was the victim of a power failure or, in fact, the cause of the power failure. I guess the important thing right now, Calvin, is that the power failure is being fixed, and where it happened and the causes and how to prevent it in the future are yet to be determined.
And for Miami-Dade Mayor Carlos Alvarez, he really wanted to emphasize that there was no indication of foul play, just a procedural problem, really a cascading effect as a result of this technical issue with FP&L, and not so much an issue of it being foul play. He has certainly talked with the federal officials, with the Homeland Security Department, just to make sure that this is not an issue of it being foul play. But they did have some extra calls that they had to deal with in terms of people calling to say there were some elevator issues and so on and so forth. But he said it was nothing major, Michael, and I thought that was one of those things that maybe he was probably trying to play it down just a bit. But in terms of traffic, it has been a major issue with so many people out there, so many accidents at least happening in Miami-Dade County. We had a count of at least 9 accidents happening.
Well, that was
in
early on.
County, yeah.
I think it's entirely understandable that the mayor, as the political leader of the county, is going to try to ease anxieties and calm fears. So he said this was really not an emergency, but, quote, a massive inconvenience, and that's undeniably true. I think the mayor may be sort of downplaying the some more severe effects for the elderly, for people in hospitals, for nursing homes, for people caught in elevators, because that is at least an inconvenience for them, and maybe worse. And certainly, as we have learned talking to Dwight Lauderdale and Lori Jennings, who are trying to drive into work, along with hundreds of thousands of people, I suspect, who are on the roads, and we're looking at some traffic right now. If you are out there on the streets, it's bad enough at any time of the day, under any circumstances, but when there have been power outages, you just simply compound it many times over.
And not to mention, I mean, Lori talked about how her BlackBerry had gone down, and also her cell phone had gone down. So for many people, that's their main source of communication. So just imagine the frustration along with being stuck in traffic for hours on end. And traffic moving along right now in some areas, but in other areas, it's really just a nightmare as they move closer into the rush hour time here of 3:41. And optimistically speaking, FP&L talked about how power could be restored for most of their customers, most of the 800,000 customers, in about an hour and 20 minutes. That's very optimistic.
Well, and I hope the estimate is a good one. What you're looking at now is, and I'm not sure whether this is live or videotape, but this is this is a videotape, I'm told, and this is US 1 in the vicinity of Coconut Grove. That is Coconut Grove there on the left, and I think that's probably Southwest 27th Avenue in Coconut Grove, a major intersection. I do see a police car that is sitting there. You can see an officer in the street. Now, I'm not sure how long ago this was, but they were without power at the moment that we shot this videotape from Sky 10, and yet the traffic seems to be moving okay with the police officer in the street.
It is, and that seems to be the case to most areas. From what Rob Schmidt told us, that and Roger Losi, both of those guys were in two areas where traffic really was not a major issue.
Well, this is not a major issue, but we have just been told by the Florida Department of Transportation that their toll collecting facilities are equipped with backup generators, and that power to all the toll lanes, including the SunPass lanes, is on. And even in a major disaster, and this is not one, you may not just simply drive through the SunPass lanes unless they give permission. And of course, during a hurricane or some other rare instances, they do simply say drive